Okay, let's think about this. What if you had to navigate a market that's, well, both this huge opportunity, but also a maze of really unique challenges?
Yeah. Or what if your own personal values, bumped up against some really powerful societal expectations?
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into China. It's uh, impossible to ignore, right? With its booming digital economy, its own cultural dynamics, and these complex geopolitical currents that are really shaping how it interacts with the world.
Mm-hmm. And our mission here really is to try and pull out the most important bits of knowledge from a whole range of sources we've looked at. We've got expert takes on market entry, geopolitical strategy.
And also stuff on youth culture, digital trends. It's a real mix.
Right. The idea is to help you understand not just, what's going on, but maybe think about how you might approach similar complex challenges wherever you are.
So let's start with the obvious pull factor. China's economic power, it's just massive. Think about it. Back in 2017, sources were already projecting like 6.7% GDP growth.
Which was huge then and really set the stage for what we see now. I mean, it's firmly on track to be the world's #1 economy.
And more Chinese companies on the Fortune Global 500 list than the U.S. now. That's a big shift.
It really is. And the scale. It's almost hard to really wrap your head around,
Yeah.
38 million cross-border e-commerce consumers projected.
That's like half the population of the UK.
Exactly. It's just an opportunity you can't ignore.
But diving into that opportunity brings some pretty fundamental challenges right away, like language, for starters.
Yeah, we say Chinese, but it's more complicated. On the mainland, it's Mandarin that's the official one, taught in schools, used on national TV and radio.
But then you've got Cantonese, mainly in Hong Kong and Macau.
Right. And the writing's different, too. You've got simplified characters for the mainland.
And traditional characters used in places like Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan. Getting that wrong could be, well, pretty confusing.
Definitely. And beyond language, just the sheer scale again. You absolutely cannot treat China as one single market.
No way. It's more like, what, 34 different regions, each one almost like its own country?
Pretty much. And we're talking over 100 cities with more than 1 million people already, projected to hit like 221 by 2025.
Wow. So that expert point about budget? Like $500 a month might only cover one city.
Yeah, exactly. It highlights how vast it is. A budget that sounds okay elsewhere just doesn't stretch the same way.
Which brings us to that really critical point about intellectual property, that first come, first serve rule.
Oof, yeah. The Apple example is a classic cautionary tale, losing the iPhone trademark fight.
Because a local company registered it first for accessories.
And Apple couldn't do anything about them selling phone cases with iPhone written on them. It just shows you have to register your trademark there early, first come, first served. It's non-negotiable.
And then there are the cultural things in business, like giving face.
Absolutely crucial. It's all about respect, building trust, making sure everyone maintains their dignity.
So the example of ordering tons of food at a business dinner.
Right. It looks like way too much, but it's not about wastefulness. It's a sign of generosity, showing respect, honoring your guests. It's about creating that feeling of abundance and goodwill.
Okay, so with all these complexities, what are some starting points the experts suggest?
Well, one common piece of advice is start where you might already have some customers, even if it's just a few.
Makes sense. And do your homework.
Definitely. Thorough market research, using local search engine data like Baidu to really understand the demand, who's looking for what, where.
And maybe starting on the East Coast because of the higher buying power there.
That's often suggested, yeah. Higher concentration of wealth, generally more developed infrastructure for logistics too.
So hearing all this, the scale, the IP rules, the cultural stuff, it makes you wonder, right? If you were getting ready to launch a new product there, how would you even begin to choose that first target city or region?
Yeah, what would your strategy be? And remembering that Apple Store, what's the absolute first thing you do to make sure your brand is protected?
Okay, if the physical market felt different, China's digital world is like a whole other universe. Forget Facebook, Google, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram.
Telegram, too. Yeah, they just don't operate there in the way we think of them. Instead, you've got these massive local players, each controlling their own very distinct ecosystem.
Right. Like WeChat. That's the big one, isn't it? The #1 app.
Oh, yeah. It's a true super app. Over 1 billion users doing pretty much everything, messaging, payments, booking things.
But interestingly, maybe less open to ads.
Generally, yeah. Users tend to see it as more of a personal communication tool, so bombarding them with ads isn't usually the best approach.
Okay. Then there's Baidu China's sort of Google equivalent.
Sort of, but it's had some credibility issues historically, which means people often trust the natural organic search results way more than the paid ads. That trust dynamic is really different.
What about reaching a mass audience, getting buzz going?
For that, Weibo is often the go-to. It's much more open to commercial content, ads, influencers. It's part of the Alibaba ecosystem, rated for shorter, punchier messages, visuals.
And Julian, that's the Chinese version of TikTok, right?
Exactly. Huge growth, video first, very popular with younger people, lots of entertainment content. But it's complex for brands to just make their own videos.
So working with influencers is key there, KOLs and KOCs.
Very much so. Key opinion leaders, the big names and key opinion customers, sort of trusted everyday users. They're often much more effective at getting messages across authentically on Douyin.
And you mentioned Bilibili, starting with anime, but growing beyond that.
Yeah, Bilibili's fascinating. Started deep in ACGN culture, anime, comics, games, novels, but now it's a huge hub for all sorts of popular culture and niche interests, like over 7,000 different interest groups.
Wow. And it's mostly user-generated video.
Professional user-generated video, PUGV they call it, accounts for something like 95% of the views, creates this incredibly tight community feel between the creators, the UPs, and their audience.
Okay, one more shall.
Right, part of the ByteDance family, like Douyin, it's a news platform, tends to skew towards maybe a slightly higher class demographic, as one source put it, because it's a bit newer. Sometimes advertising there can be cheaper.
But a big challenge is that these platforms don't talk to each other. Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, they keep their data separate.
Exactly. Unlike the West, where data sharing is more common, these ecosystems are pretty walled off, makes doing that kind of cross-channel campaign analysis much, much harder. It adds a layer of complexity for marketers, for sure.
So strategy-wise, digitalization is just essential, even for luxury brands.
Absolutely. And we talked about KOLs and KOCs. They are critical. Plus, for foreign companies, platforms like Tmall, part of Alibaba, offer a relatively straightforward way to sell online.
Like that example of Blackmores, the Australian supplement brand, making 80% of their China sales online via Tmall.
Yeah, it shows how powerful those online channels are.
So here's where it gets really interesting for anyone thinking about this. Imagine you're launching a digital campaign in China right now. Knowing how different WeChat, Weibo, and Douyin are, and how fierce the competition is.
Yeah.
What kind of content strategy would you actually use?
Right. How would you try to cut through all that noise and genuinely connect with people, make your message stick?
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's definitely getting more attention.
Mm-hmm.
The whole geopolitical situation and the regulatory risks.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be this growing consensus, particularly in Europe, around the idea of de-risking from China rather than a full decoupling like we saw with Russia.
And that's driven by things like the pandemic supply chain issues, concerns about economic coercion, and, well, the potential for conflict over Taiwan.
Exactly. Those factors are pushing countries to reassess their dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
But the U.S. and the EU seem to be approaching it slightly differently. Well, the U.S. focus seems heavily on protecting critical technologies like advanced semiconductors. So you see outbound export controls, investment screening, trying to prevent key tech getting into the wrong hands from their perspective.
Okay, national security focus.
Yeah.
And the EU.
The EU seems more focused on securing its own supply chains for its big priorities like the green transition, think solar panels, wind turbines, EV batteries. They want to reduce their reliance on China for those specific critical goods. So the vulnerabilities and strategies differ.
That brings us to this idea of enterprise China. What exactly does that mean?
It's described as this kind of multi-trillion-dollar monolith. It's not just the government. It includes the big state-owned enterprises, SOEs, but also, importantly, many privately owned enterprises, POEs, that still operate under significant state influence or direction.
So there's less of a clear line between state and private business.
In many key sectors, yes. And China actively pushes for high domestic market shares for its own companies, like 70-90% targets in 15 specific industries.
Yeah.
Even a giant like Tesla has to operate within that framework.
And this kind of control environment is leading to more regulatory risks, right? Like the new anti-espionage law.
Yeah, that's a big one, causing a lot of concern. The definition of a state secret is incredibly broad. It could be economic data, internal company info, really anything the authorities decide is negative or sensitive.
And we've seen actual examples of this causing problems for foreign firms.
Absolutely. There were raids on the due diligence firm Mintz, then the consulting firm Bain, even an expert network firm called Cap Vision. It sends a real chill through the foreign business community.
And the thing with the big four accounting firms, Being told state companies shouldn't renew contracts with their offshore arms.
Right. And then Deloitte getting hit with that massive fine, 212 million yuan for supposedly inadequate auditing, while the company they audited got a much smaller penalty. It definitely raises questions about fairness and risk.
It really does. And the risk of exit bans seems particularly scary for individuals.
It's incredibly worrying. Foreign nationals being prevented from leaving, sometimes over relatively minor issues, often without clear legal recourse. It's a serious personal risk.
So what's the motivation behind all this tightening?
Ultimately, it seems the party's top priority is maintaining stability and control, basically, self-preservation, controlling information, preventing internal problems from becoming public knowledge. That seems to trump even economic growth at times.
So for foreign companies still operating there, what's the advice?
The consensus seems to be you need options. You need to diversify your risk where possible and not have all your eggs in the China basket.
And strengthen your local leadership.
Crucially, yes. Having experienced Chinese insiders and senior management is vital because, well, Westerners can never truly have that same internal perspective or navigate the system in the same way.
So facing all this, the increasing scrutiny, the geopolitical tensions, if you were running a foreign business in China today, how would you shift your strategy?
Yeah, how would you try to mitigate these risks while still, trying to capture whatever opportunities are left? What would be your priorities?
Let's shift focus again, this time to the people, specifically China's younger generation, this emerging youth group.
Right. They're shaped by these decentralized digital spaces. They're adapting to more flexible work, maybe holding multiple jobs. It's leading to kind of new values emerging.
But alongside that, they're facing some really intense societal pressures, aren't they? And challenges to mental well-being.
Definitely. You hear terms like digital boredom, this feeling of being overwhelmed by infinite digital choices, leading some to feel sort of bored or disengaged.
And lying flat, tang-ping.
Yeah, that reflects a kind of passive resistance,
Ugh.
a stepping back from the intense competition and traditional pathways to success because they feel unattainable or undesirable.
And the legacy of the single-child policy still casts a long shadow, it seems.
Oh, hugely. Parents often invest everything in their one child, seeing the child's success, like getting into Harvard or Yale, as a direct reflection on them.
That sounds like immense pressure. One expert called it product-like parenting.
Yes, and warned about the potential consequences, unhappiness, depression, even suicide in tragic cases. It's a really heavy burden for young people.
Even entrepreneurship, which the government encourages.
Yeah.
It's not always a positive path.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. Many startups fail, obviously, but in Chinese culture, losing or failing publicly can be incredibly shameful, like a scarlet letter.
That adds a whole layer of psychological stress.
Exactly. Which is why one expert made a strong case for micro-innovation or lifestyle entrepreneurship. Being happy, running a successful small business like selling donuts, rather than feeling you have to chase that billion-dollar unicorn status, which is incredibly rare and stressful.
That makes a lot of sense. What about e-gaming? That seems huge there.
Massive, like 90% engagement during Chinese New Year, massive. And it's not just escapism, it's a major way young people socialize, connect with friends.
And maybe even learn skills for a digital world.
Yeah, one source suggested it helps them learn behaviors relevant to navigating a more machine-oriented world. It's an interesting take.
Finally, this idea of the three positives and authenticity. What's that about?
It refers to the pressure, especially online, to conform to politically correct narratives, to avoid expressing opinions that might be seen as controversial or negative.
Just suppressing your real views.
Potentially, yeah. Which is why that point about dying on your own sword, being true to yourself, speaking your truth, even if it's difficult, resonated. Choosing integrity over just conforming.
Okay, connecting all this back. If you were a young person in China today, dealing with all these intense pressures from parents, from society, the fear of failure, how would you try to define what a fulfilling life means for you?
Yeah, beyond those standard external markers of success, like university prestige or hitting unicorn status, what would actually bring you meaning and happiness?
All right, let's touch on one last really fascinating area. China's role in changing the future of money.
They were pioneers with mobile payments, right? WeChat Pay, Alipay. They made it basically free and immediate.
And the usage just exploded. What was that figure? $78 trillion in mobile payments annually.
Yeah, $78 trillion, which is apparently twice the entire global credit card volume and 4 times China's own GDP. It's just staggering numbers.
Mind-boggling. And this digital payment infrastructure now sets the stage for their central bank digital currency, the digital yuan.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's seen as potentially creating the superhighway for money, moving much faster and more efficiently than traditional systems.
And potentially challenging the U.S. dollar's dominance.
That's certainly part of the thinking, especially after events like the freezing of Russia's dollar assets. Other countries are definitely looking for alternatives, ways to diversify away from relying so heavily on the dollar and the U.S. financial system.
And this ties into the idea of cloud capital. What is that?
It refers to this algorithmic AI-driven capital that's increasingly controlled by the big tech giants, Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, owner of TikTok, doing.
Okay. And China has an advantage here.
A pretty significant one, potentially. Because unlike in the US, where you often have tension or competition between Wall Street finance and Silicon Valley tech,
Right.
in China, both the finance sector and big tech are ultimately under the umbrella of Communist Party control. There's more alignment, less friction.
So they can integrate finance and tech more seamlessly.
Potentially, yes. Create a more unified digital financial system. The idea is that this could eventually attract more global money flows onto their superhighway, perhaps moving away from what some call the rickety road of the dollar system. It's a long-term strategic play.
Wow. Okay. That definitely gives you something to think about regarding the future. So considering these rapid advances in digital currency, the digital yuan, this cloud capital, if you were a global investor or maybe running a business with cross-border operations, how would you start rethinking your financial strategy right now? What adjustments would you consider making to adapt to this potentially massive shift? #DAGD outro.
Well, we covered a lot of ground today. Our goal was really to give you a shortcut, drawing on all these expert sources to get a better handle on the opportunities and the very real challenges in China.
Yeah, we looked at it as this huge, complex market, a unique digital world with its own rules, a place right at the center of shifting geopolitics and risks.
And also as a society going through these profound changes, especially for its younger generation, driven by tech and some really unique pressures.
And I think one thing that comes through is that success there, whether it's in business or culture or even just personal life, often seems to depend on understanding these deep systems and how people respond to them.
It really does. Which kind of leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it?
Oh.
In a world where we see these powerful, often centralized forces getting stronger, whether it's tech platforms or governments,
How much control do we as individuals actually have over our own paths, over how we define success for ourselves? It's something to ponder.